Picture this. A woman lies dying in a rented room in downtown Los Angeles. The year is 1908. Outside, streetcars rattle past a city that has no idea what it is about to receive from two of its most invisible residents. Inside that room, a man kneels beside his wife's bed, and for the first time since fire fell on him 2 years earlier, he does not know if God is going to come through. The doctors have already said what they came to say. There is nothing left medicine can offer her. A tumor has taken almost everything from her body, her strength, her color, her ability to stand. What it has not taken is her husband's refusal to let this be the end of a story that began in a converted horse stable on a street nobody important had ever heard of. He has no money for more doctors, no connections, no institution standing behind him. What he has is a memory. June 1906, the moment fire fell on him in a building that smelled of sawdust and sweat. Surrounded by people of every color, a segregated city had spent its whole short life trying to keep apart. So he does the only thing left to do. He gathers his wife into his arms, carries her out into the Los Angeles heat, and starts walking toward a tent where a woman named Maria Woodworth Etter is preaching healing to anyone desperate enough to come. Have you ever stood at the end of everything you know how to do, with the person you love most running out of time, holding nothing but a memory of fire? What few people know is that this man and his wife are not famous. You will not find their names in most history books. No statue, no denomination bearing their name, no biography on a bookstore shelf. And yet what they are about to do in that room, and what they had already been doing, quietly, for 2 years before it, would help birth a movement that today numbers in the hundreds of millions of believers across 2 continents. From 2 anonymous immigrants nobody in their own city would have looked at twice, to the root system of an entire stream of the Christian faith that, more than a century later, still has not stopped growing. His name was Abundio Lopez. Hers was Rosa. And this is the story of the price they paid, a price the world never repaid them for, and never will. Comment below with, "I came for sanctification." If you're ready to labor unseen by day, seek God by night, and carry the one you love toward his last hope when nothing else is left, and stay until the end, where we reveal the hidden disciplines that kept their fire burning 40 years, so yours can too. In 1902, a young man named Abundio Lopez left Guadalajara, Mexico, and crossed into California. He was not famous. He held no title, no office, no platform. He was, most likely, one more pair of hands on the railroads that were stitching the American West together. Labor the history books rarely bother to name. But before Abundio Lopez ever set foot inside the building that would change his life, he was already a Christian. He had already come to Christ. He had already married Rosa. This is not the story of 2 unconverted people stumbling into religion. This is the story of 2 believers who already loved God, and were still hungry for more of Him than they had yet received. That hunger had a name. In the world Abundio and Rosa belonged to, serious believers spoke of a journey with 3 distinct stages. The first was justification. The moment sin is forgiven, the slate wiped clean. The second was sanctification, what some called the second work of grace, a deeper cleansing of the heart, evidenced not by emotion alone but by the quiet, ongoing fruit of divine love in a person's daily life. The third was a baptism of power, a spirit-filled life equipped to do what the earliest apostles did. Abundio and Rosa had the first. They were starving for the second. Picture the discipline behind that hunger. 2 working immigrants after a full day's labor, kneeling together in a rented room, fasting, praying in a mixture of broken English and their native Spanish, asking God for a holiness they could not manufacture themselves. No one was watching, no one was filming, no congregation applauded. This was the room where the fire that would one day reach 2 continents was first being kindled, in total obscurity, by 2 people the city of Los Angeles had never once looked at twice. This is the cost few people name when they tell stories like this one. The cost of being hungry for God in a place that offers you no shortcuts to Him. La Placita, the historic plaza at the heart of Mexican Los Angeles, was solidly Catholic, deeply rooted, generations old. It was a community with its own answers. Abundio and Rosa's hunger for something more was not safe. It was not encouraged. It was theirs to carry, quietly, alone. And then, a few blocks away, something broke open that they could not have invented if they tried. On May 29, 1906, less than 2 months after a small mission had quietly opened its doors on Azusa Street, Abundio and Rosa walked in. What they found did not look like power. It looked like nothing. A converted livery stable. What had once housed horses now housed hundreds of seekers crammed onto rough benches. The air thick with heat and the smell of sweat. A plague of flies in the corners. Noise loud enough that neighbors for blocks around could not sleep. The mission had already been publicly criticized by the city's church federation, threatened repeatedly with closure by law enforcement, and some of its key figures had already been arrested. The Los Angeles press had given the place a dozen mocking names. "Weird Babel of tongues," one headline screamed. "New sect of fanatics is breaking loose," warned another. "Holy kickers baffle police." "Frenzied woman embraces man on street." This was not a comfortable place to be seen walking into. And at the center of it all stood a man even more overlooked than they were. William Seymour, a black preacher, the son of formerly enslaved parents, blind in one eye, leading a revival that dared to seat African Americans, Anglos, and Mexicans in the same room, on the same benches, under the same fire, in a city built to keep them apart. One witness, a Methodist who attended those early meetings, said it plainly. The revival had not begun in some elegant sanctuary, because if it had, the poor, the black, and the Spanish-speaking would never have dared to walk through the door. It began in a barn, on purpose, so that people like Abundio and Rosa could come in. A week later, on June 5, 1906, it happened. Abundio was baptized in the Holy Spirit. Rosa's experience was so significant it was later printed in the Apostolic Faith, the mission's own newspaper, circulated to readers around the world. In their own words, recorded that same year, they had come for sanctification, and they thanked God for the baptism with the Holy Ghost and fire that followed. 1 week. That is all it took from visitor to instrument. But notice what came before that week. Months, maybe years, of hidden hunger nobody saw. The fire that fell in public in June was lit in private long before anyone was watching. Here is the cost this act must name plainly. Simply walking through that door cost Abundio and Rosa something. It meant being seen entering a building the city's newspapers had already turned into a punchline. It meant choosing visible solidarity with a black-led multiracial movement in an era when the races were not supposed to mix. A choice with real consequences in 1906 Los Angeles. It meant risking the disapproval of their own deeply Catholic community, who had its own answers and did not ask for new ones. They paid that price before they had received a single thing in return. The discipline that answered that cost was not caution. It was not waiting for the controversy to settle or for the neighborhood to approve. It was showing up anyway, hungry enough that the cost of staying away had become greater than the cost of walking in. But what you have not seen yet is the moment that nearly broke them both. It did not happen on a stage or behind a pulpit. It happened beside a sickbed, when the very fire they had given everything for seemed about to go out for good. That is where we are going next. Before we follow Abundio into the year his faith was tested against his own wife's life, a quick thank you to the people who keep stories like this from staying buried. If you would love to be part of the community that ensures these hidden legacies are told, and told well, hit the join button on the channel homepage, or click the membership link in the description below. You will not just be supporting a channel, you will be standing in the same spirit as the witnesses themselves, and encouraging many others to run with endurance the race God has set before them. Here is what almost no one does after the most powerful spiritual experience of their life. Go straight back to their own street and start serving, with no title, no salary, and no one's permission. Abundio and Rosa did exactly that. Within weeks of their baptism in the Holy Spirit, they were holding open-air meetings in La Placita, the very plaza their own community called home, preaching in Spanish to their own people with no formal commissioning, no denomination behind them, no one telling them they were ready. They became altar workers at the Azusa Street mission itself, kneeling beside new seekers night after night, helping Spanish-speaking attendees find the same fire they had found weeks earlier. And Abundio took on something even harder, leading what records call the Gospel Detective Mission, carrying the message to Mexican laborers on the Southern Pacific Railroad, men as overlooked and unglamorous as he had once been. Here is the rhythm few people ever see. Abundio worked his manual job by day and worked the altars of Azusa Street by night. Not occasionally, consistently. Imagine that calendar. A full day's labor under the sun, then hours of unpaid, unrecognized ministry until the early morning, and then doing it again the next day and the next for years. No applause, no salary, no rest. They also traveled, in short stretches, to cities across South Los Angeles, carrying the same message to their countrymen wherever they could be found. This is the cost this act must name plainly: status, income, and comfort. They went from new converts to unpaid laborers among laborers within months of their own breakthrough. And they did it before they felt ready, before anyone in authority had validated them, before there was any guarantee it would work. The discipline that answered that cost was immediate obedience, not eventual obedience, not obedience once the conditions were perfect. Immediate. They did not wait to be sent, because they had already understood something most people never learn. The Spirit who baptizes you is the same Spirit who commissions you. No further paperwork required. And here is what makes their story different from so many missionary stories you may have heard. Nobody sent them. No outside missionary carried the Pentecostal message to the Mexican community of Los Angeles and handed it to Abundio and Rosa to deliver on someone else's behalf. They were not recipients of someone else's calling. From the very beginning, Latino believers like them were, in the words of one historian, an integral part of the revival, themselves responsible for spreading the restoration of Pentecost to their own people, in their own language, on their own initiative. They were not given a mission. They were founders of one. And the fruit of that discipline was a revival breaking out among Latin-speaking men and women across Los Angeles. A fruit historians still trace directly back to the obedience of two people the world had never heard of, who decided their own plaza, their own people, their own overlooked railroad workers were worth everything they had left to give. Now we return to where this story began. It is 1908. 2 years into a ministry built on unpaid nights and unglamorous days, Rosa develops a tumor. Her health collapses with terrifying speed. Even Abundio, a man who has spent 2 years watching God move in other people's lives, does not expect his own wife to live much longer. There is no money for adequate medical treatment. As working-class immigrants, there is barely money for anything. The door that medicine has closed leaves only one door still open: faith, with nothing held in reserve behind it. So Abundio does what we saw him begin to do at the very start of this story. He picks his wife up, he carries her, by faith, as a final act with no fallback plan, to a healing meeting led by the evangelist Maria Woodworth Etter. And God heals her. Not gradually, not partially. The record is plain. Rosa, who had been so weak even her own husband did not expect her to survive, was healed, and the two of them continued their work together, side by side, as they had since the beginning. Let this act slow down here, because this is the cost few documentaries about miracle stories are honest enough to name. The terror of believing you might lose the very person who has walked the entire call with you and choosing to act in faith anyway, with absolutely nothing left to fall back on if it does not work. That is not the same as faith offered from a place of safety. That is faith offered from the very edge of everything. The discipline that answered that cost was not a clever theological argument. It was not a formula. It was a man carrying his dying wife on his own back toward the only hope left, because he believed the God who lit fire in a converted stable 2 years earlier had not changed. And the fruit was not only Rosa's healing. The fruit was a marriage and a ministry that did not end in 1908, but continued together for decades still to come. By 1909, 3 years had passed since Abundio's baptism in the Holy Spirit. 3 years of unpaid altars, unglamorous railroad missions, and a wife raised from near death. And in 1909, William Seymour formally ordained him. He was not ordained alone. That same year, Seymour also ordained a man named Juan Navarro Martinez. Historian Gaston Espinosa, the leading scholar on this exact chapter of history, describes that moment as marking the formal birth of the Latin Pentecostal movement in the Americas, a sentence that should stop us, because it means the movement, now spanning hundreds of millions of believers, traces its formal origin to this one ordinary afternoon, with these 2 unheralded men. But 1909 was not a simple year of celebration. It was, by every honest historical account, 2 things happening at once. There was real friction, even an actual break, in language and in structure, between the Latino believers and the leadership of the mission that had given them their fire. Some accounts describe it in stark terms: a disfellowship, a fracture along racial and linguistic lines. And in that very same year, in the middle of that very same fracture, Seymour placed his hands on Abundio and Navarro and ordained them to carry that fire forward on their own. Loss and commissioning, in the same breath. A door closing on one side of the room while a door opened on the other. Here is the cost this act must name plainly: the price of pioneering inside a movement that did not yet have settled answers about people who looked like them. Even within a revival famous for tearing down walls of race, full belonging did not arrive automatically, instantly, or without cost. Left without a building of their own, Abundio and Rosa kept ministering exactly where they had started. In the open plaza, exposed to weather, exposed to public skepticism, with no walls to retreat behind. The discipline that answered that cost was not bitterness, it was not withdrawal. Whatever exactly happened that year, the response of Abundio and Rosa was to keep pouring into people. Records show they personally brought a couple named Romanita and Genaro Valenzuela into the Pentecostal movement. 2 names you have likely never heard, who went on to help organize some of the largest and most enduring Pentecostal organizations in North America for generations afterward. And the fruit reached even further than that. Abundio's own ministry would eventually help seed the Spanish-speaking Assemblies of God, while Navarro went on, years later, to help establish a separate Pentecostal movement of his own. 2 men, ordained the same year by the same hand, in the middle of the same painful, complicated season, became root systems for 2 different branches of the faith that are both still standing, still growing, still baptizing new believers today. Here is what most people assume happens to pioneers like Abundio and Rosa: a brief, dramatic season of breakthrough, followed by silence. That is not what happened. What happened is harder and far more inspiring. Abundio's ministry did not end in 1909. It continued for over 4 decades. He pastored the Apostolic Faith Church on South Spring Street in Los Angeles. In 1914, Elmer Fisher, leader of the nearby Victoria Hall Pentecostal Assembly, awarded him a second set of ministerial credentials in recognition of years of faithful service already given. Abundio continued in active ministry for decades after that, serving faithfully until 1943, 37 years after the night fire first fell on him in a converted stable. 35 years after he carried his dying wife across the city in his own arms. Think about what that means. The cost of obscurity was never a single dramatic season that ended. It was the entire shape of a lifelong ministry, faithful, quiet, and almost entirely unrecorded. For 40 more years after the part of the story most documentaries would have stopped telling. Today, Latino Pentecostalism spans the Americas. It numbers in the hundreds of millions. The plaza where Abundio and Rosa once preached, what is now known as Azusa Street, still stands in downtown Los Angeles, still a living landmark, still visited daily by people who have no idea what happened there in 1906. One historian describes the believers Abundio and Rosa's preaching sent out across the border into Mexico as anonymous forerunners, their names lost in the labyrinth of a history that has yet to be fully traced. Another, the leading scholar on the Azusa Street revival itself, has admitted plainly that this entire story has been told so poorly, so incompletely, that it has been treated by most historians as barely worth mentioning at all. A footnote to a footnote, when it should be a foundation stone. They left no recorded estate, no institutional monument bearing their names, no widely known biography sitting on a shelf. What they left was this: countless lives changed, congregations multiplied, and two separate streams of a global movement that can both be traced back to two unpaid altar workers who once carried more fire than the city around them knew what to do with. The fire that burned in Abundio and Rosa never belonged to them. It belonged to the God they sought in hidden, unglamorous hours no one else saw. Their ministry cost them comfort, status, and any claim to being remembered. And they paid it without complaint, for 40 years, long after anyone was watching. The final price, named plainly, Abundio and Rosa paid in full, and were never repaid in recognition. And they kept going anyway, because the call was never about being remembered. It was about being used. You stayed to the end, and as promised, here is what kept Abundio and Rosa's fire burning for 40 years. First, the discipline of hidden hunger, pursuing sanctification in private, long before anyone was watching, before there was any fire to show for it. Second, the discipline of immediate obedience, returning to their own plaza days after their breakthrough, refusing to wait for permission, training, or readiness that might never come. Third, the discipline of costly faith without a fallback, carrying what they loved most toward God's last hope, with nothing held in reserve, and continuing to serve faithfully for decades after the world had stopped watching. These three disciplines are not locked in 1906. They are available to you right now, today. Are you available? Not someday. Today. Abundio and Rosa were not chosen for being exceptional. They were chosen for being hungry, willing, and present. There may be a plaza God is asking you to walk back into, your own people, waiting for permission you no longer need. There may be someone you have not yet carried far enough in faith. What is God asking of you right now that you have postponed because you did not feel ready? Comment below with, "I came for sanctification," if you are ready to answer. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, like and subscribe to Cloud of Witnesses for more life-changing stories of faith that will equip you to boldly fulfill the call of God in your life. This week, set aside 20 minutes each morning to ask God for sanctification, not forgiveness alone, but a clean, surrendered heart. Write down one area still ruled by self, and surrender it daily for 7 days. 2 unpaid altar workers carried fire across a continent without asking to be remembered. What happens when a woman with even less platform gives God everything anyway? Could an illiterate street vendor become one of the fiercest evangelists Los Angeles had seen? What does it cost to preach with no pulpit, no permission but God's own? Discover the story of Susie Villa Valdez, the discipline that turned a tamale vendor into a fearless evangelist, and what it will cost you to carry that fire into your own street today.